With the strain put on us of a long growing season and the seemingly monumental job of our yearly garden cleanup, fall planting is often a forgotten endeavor. Which really is a shame, because some of your greatest harvests of the year could be coming in the autumn months. Well, today we're going to remedy that by talking about all the ins and outs of fall gardening. As well, we're going to clean, clear, and plant this bed to show you some of those techniques. And if that wasn't enough, I'll give you my top 5 fall crops to plant this autumn, as well as the reasoning behind each one. Hey, buckle up, we got a lot to cover as we try to give you your best fall garden ever. When we plant in the spring, our gardens seem to be this blank slate of unlimited possibilities. We appear to have all the time in the world, and the weather is getting measurably better every day. But with every planting, spring or fall, timing is king. And there's really no way around it. It's even more important with our fall planting. The looming winter is just that. An impending frigid void that once we're in the thick of it, well, that's it. It's going to negate everything we've done. And this is going to create a sense of urgency. And it's out of this urgency that we get our first of 3 fall planting tips, and that's timing. The typical growing season is simple. In all but the most temperate regions, spring-summer gives us this luxurious window of forgiving planting times. Not so with fall planting. Days are getting shorter, and nights are getting progressively cooler. Make no mistake, the clock is ticking, and we can see it with nature. The plants are shutting it down and getting prepared for winter. Yet somehow, us gardeners want to plant? Nobody's ever accused us growers of being completely logical 100% of the time. In reality though, if timed right, you can grow the most amazing fall abundance. And it all revolves around our first fall frost date, which designates the first day in the fall where there's a greater than 50% chance of getting frost that night. This date is different for every region, climate, state, or province, but it's super easy to look up for your local area. Like our last spring frost date, the fall one determines when we should plant. Unlike the spring, however, where we're waiting to plant as soon as it warms up enough, the fall frost date is a specific day where we count backwards from to ensure that we have enough time to grow. No question, the timing for fall planting is going to be the biggest contributor to our success. After timing, our next focus is plant selection. Not all crops are going to be able to be grown at this time of year. Your tomatoes and peppers will not tolerate the increasingly cold nights, and things like bulb onions use day length as a clue to bulb up. So, it's the wrong time of year for many plants. The crops we choose are planted in the fall by design. They're grown at this time of year for a reason, and this reason comes with a purpose. You see, planting for the fall comes with 3 different planting types. The first type are quick crops, like these peas here. Quick crops are plants that grow so fast, they beat old man winter to the punch. They go from seed to harvest so quick, the looming frost is not a concern. The second planting type are crops that don't do well in the blazing summer heat, like this dinosaur kale here. They actually produce a better, tastier harvest as the mercury drops. And finally, the third planting type are ones where you're planning for the future, like this garlic here. These are plants that need to establish themselves before our winter hits, but quickly go dormant, then magically sprouting and giving us their bounties the following year. 3 very different crop types and reasons for planting, yet all revolving around that fall frost date. I should note as well, fall planting is not all about compromises and just shoehorning in extra crops to fill a void. Nope, There's distinct advantages to be planting in the fall. For one, there's much less weeds. Those vegetative invaders are pretty much done for the year. Same with all of our insect pests. There's going to be a much less need to water because of the moderate temperatures, which are nice for both the plants and for us to work in. And finally, paring it down, there's a much less confusing list of plants to grow for new gardeners. You know, when you think about it, in some respects, fall planting is even easier than spring planting because it is so regimented. You know, the room for error is much smaller, so the recipes for success are much more defined. In my opinion, with fall planting, even the new grower is going to have a simpler time understanding the order of operations, leading to them having more success. Which is why I think that fall gardening should be for everyone, and not just the veteran growers. And when you think about it, if you're just getting started with your first garden, this means that you can now do it year-round. The list of crops that can be grown and planted in the fall is many and varied. But if we look at the 3 fall planting types that we just discussed and put them into categories, the options become much more clear. And leading the way for plants that grow fast enough to beat that winter ticking time bomb, well, we're back to our peas. These guys can take that fall frost date right out of the equation. You see, peas are great in that they germinate fast and they grow even faster. Choose a snow variety grown for the edible pea pods and not the peas themselves, and plant 6 to 8 weeks before your first frost. Lettuce and radishes also make a good choice in the fast crop category, but the peas' ability to take on a little cold, well, that tends to make them more forgiving. So they get the nod this time round. Next on our list is a guy who just hates growing in the summer, and that's cabbage. No question, cabbage is a crop that just thrives in the cold. With those famously whorled leaves tasting much sweeter and much crunchier than those collected in the heat of summer. Cabbage can be a bit of a slow grower, but the first frosts are not going to harm this guy at all. Plant it about 12 weeks before your first fall frost date and enjoy the extended harvest window that cabbage can bring. In the category of planning for the future, garlic is the #1 crop. Planted truly in the fall, mere weeks before frost hits, garlic is a plant that actually needs the winter chilling period to form a proper bulb. Individual cloves are planted somewhat shallow, depending on the severity of your winter, and then left alone for upwards of 6 months. The following spring, they sprout with gusto, and the summer harvest is an event everyone seems to enjoy. Speaking of enjoyment, is there anything better than summer strawberries? If there is, I haven't found it. A nutrient and producing powerhouse, strawberries are a low-crawling perennial, often associated with summer, and rightly so, because that's when we pick it. However, the planning and planting is done with the future in mind. You see, strawberries are rarely prolific in the year that they're planted. Strawberry plants set their following year's flowers in the fall. As such, keen growers get their new strawberry plants into the ground before winter to establish them in hopes of an epic harvest the following year. Much like with garlic, we may be planting the strawberries now, but it's all about the next year's harvest. Plan on getting your strawberries into the ground at least a month before your first fall frost date. And lastly, for our final recommendation, we have not one plant, but a group of plants, and the subject of our little planting demonstration here today. I'm talking about brassicas. Yes, your kales and your collard greens are also brassicas, but they're not the ones you need to focus on for fall. No doubt, all brassicas do better in cooler weather, like this dinosaur kale here. But the ones you really need to focus on for fall are those ones with a fruiting head. It's these ones that, when grown in the heat of the summer, have a real chance of bolting and going to flower and giving you no harvest at all. I think pretty much everyone can agree brassicas are the heart of fall planting. So with that, let's see it in action. Let's go ahead and clear out this 2x8 raised garden bed and plant some snowball cauliflower in the process. Like our cabbage from before, fruiting brassicas such as this cauliflower here can be a bit of a long crop. So you want to get them into the ground at least 2 months before that first fall frost. First up, I'm going to start by clearing the area of the old spent crops. Now, this was a productive bed and it grew cilantro, carrots, lettuces, and Swiss chard, all in a single season. And I've got to admit, adding cauliflower to that mix is going to be amazing. I always like to clean out my spent beds with as little disturbance to the soil as possible. It's fairly simple. For the carrots, I pull them up as normal, but for all the other crops, I simply cut them down right at the root collar. Check out the video up there in the top corner for a quick tutorial on the whole process. Okay, all cleared up, time for some planting. Cauliflower is a plant that likes a lot of space, at least 1 foot to 1.5 feet. This is an 8-foot bed, so these 6 plants should fit in just perfectly. I'm going to pre-dig all the holes first because it gives me a better idea of the spacing. As I'm doing this, I notice that the soil is a little on the dry side, so I'm going to soak in each hole really good to eliminate any chances of transplant shock. Dry soil, warm weather, and young plants, they just don't mix. Soaking each hole prior to planting will really ensure that these cauliflower starts have the best chance at life in their new home. Planting cauliflower is super easy. Just bury the starter plants right up to the existing root collar. As you may have noticed, I'm using a different soil here. I do like to use a dedicated potting mix, even though these guys are going into the outside garden. I find that it gives them a little boost, and it allows those young roots to reach outwards more easily. Planting is easy, and all 6 plants takes less than 3 minutes. Even though it's the end of summer, and I'm planting in the early evening, it's still quite warm, so watering is a must. But before we do that, like always, let's mulch first. A nice thick layer of clean straw is going to get the job done. It's going to keep that soil moist, even out those extreme temperatures, and it's going to prevent erosion, which is good because the crazy fall rains are not far away. With the mulch layer in place, we can now safely water without blasting that fresh soil everywhere. We'll water nice and thoroughly, really soaking in that entire soil profile. The mulch is going to lock in that moisture, giving the new cauliflower roots a safe space to spread and establish themselves. Whew, that was a lot of info, maybe a little too much. So let's recap the finer points to hammer home the important stuff. The single most important aspect of fall planting is the timing. We're growing knowing full well that time is limited and the clock is ticking. Once you find out your first fall frost date for your area, you can then work backwards to find out not only when to plant, but also what you can plant. There isn't enough time to grow all crops, and the warm weather choices are out of the question. Fall plants are going to fall into 3 different categories. 3 different reasons why they're suited for end of the season planting versus planting in the spring or summer. First are the quick crops, like peas, radishes, and lettuce. These guys grow so fast, you can squeeze them in seed to harvest in the tiniest growing windows. Second, we have plants that just do better in the cold. Plants like your kale, broccoli, and cauliflower. The yield from their harvests are not only better, but they're tastier because of those cooler temperatures. And our third planting type is the future crops. The ones that are overwintered because they need a chilling period. Plants such as garlic and berry crops like strawberries, raspberries, and blueberries. Plants that fall into these categories are wide and many, so you're never going to have a shortage of choices when it comes to autumn gardening. Fall gardening is more than just bonus crops after a long summer. Some plants just do better with the cooler temperatures, while others simply require it. Hopefully today I've shown you just how easy it is to get started with fall planting, so you too can extend your growing season just a little bit longer. Hey, happy growing guys, and I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for watching guys. I appreciate the support more than you know. And if you're getting value from these videos, please like and share them to spread the word and help your fellow gardener to grow better.